All right, guys, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And as I record this commentary going in, I am hoping that I was not alone in this in regards to today's topic back in the 1990s. And I hope some of you guys in the comment section will kind of help ease my mind on this, because in the 1990s, I was tricked. I was tricked hard. I was tricked really bad by a video game, and it was definitely not what I was expecting. And that is Mario's Time Machine. Now, I know right off the bat, some of you guys might be thinking, well, Jack, there's no such thing as a bad Mario game. All Mario games are good, etc., etc., etc. And I completely understand where you're coming from with this, but let me iterate and go into a little bit more detail, okay? Now, I don't know about you guys, but back when I was in school, one of the things that I definitely hated was homework, right? Especially if it was given on weekends, you know, and then you had that dreadful test to take on Monday, right? Because you had homework over the weekend, and on top of that, you had to study for the test, and then, you know, on Monday there was the test or whatnot, right? And it didn't matter if it was elementary school, middle school, or high school, or whatnot, right? Homework was something that I always personally dreaded, and more often than not, I was terrible about it, right? I didn't always do my homework on a Friday, so that way I would be free on Saturday and Sunday to do whatever and not have it hanging over my head, right? Okay, cool. I think we all get the point, right? And hopefully we can all relate. Well, one day I go into Blockbuster, right? I go into Blockbuster and I see a brand new Mario game. I'm thinking, I can't go wrong with this game. I literally can't go wrong with this game. It's a brand new Mario game. Never heard of it, never saw it before. Great, I'm gonna pick it up, right? So that's exactly what I do, and I rent it. Okay, now it also just so happened that a friend of mine was sleeping over on that same exact weekend, right? So we did the thing that we usually did, right? We got together and we basically tried to beat any said video game by the time the sleepover was over, right? This is basically what we did. We were gamers. That's what we did. We played video games. We played basketball. We'd swim in the pool, you know, all that good stuff, right? Okay, cool. But I had absolutely no idea that upon renting Mario's Time Machine, that I would give myself extra homework for the weekend. And everything that you're seeing in this background, right, which I don't even know if I should even call it gameplay, to be honest. I'm just going to call it homework, right? I mean, I'm just calling it homework, right? Because that is exactly what you're pretty much doing for the entirety of the game when it comes to Mario's Time Machine, right? Now, one good thing about Mario's Time Machine was that the soundtrack, of course, that the music in the game was absolutely top notch when it came down to it. But when it comes to the quote-unquote fun factor and whether or not you could even call it a traditional video game is definitely something up to debate. It's definitely not traditional, right? Because quite frankly, it's literally homework with a Mario paint job. So basically you're going around, you know, it's basically like history homework, and you're filling in questions, you know, going through different areas of time and talking to Leonardo da Vinci or whatever, and you're filling in the blanks, right? You've got these, you know, scroll looking pieces of paper, old school pieces of paper, right, that look like certificate paper or whatever it is from what I can recall, and there are, you know, you're basically filling in the blanks as best you can, and you get this menu that you can choose from that have all these different possible answers. And let me tell you, my best friend at the time and I, when we were scrolling through everything, now remember, back then in the 90s there was no internet, there were no smartphones, it's not like we can go on to Google and say, hey, you know, and get all those questions answered. No, it's simple as that. The only way you could possibly get all these questions answered is if you actually called your history teacher up, right? But back then, my teacher in school, I had one teacher for every subject, right? In elementary school when I had stumbled upon this game, right? So thank God I didn't buy it either. But anyway, I think that would be like the best way in order to like get some of these questions answered. So it's not like I had a dedicated history teacher. If I had a dedicated history teacher, I'd say I would have the best shot of completing the game back then. But I have something interesting to say about that, but I'll get into that. It's you guys are gonna love that. But the thing is this, all you're doing is literally answering questions in the game for the most part from start to finish. And I don't know what they were thinking. Now, I could have done research on this game, but I just didn't want to. Honestly, just didn't want to. I'm thinking that back in the day, video games were becoming so popular, so fast, especially with children, that it was probably affecting their grades. And Nintendo, and of course, using their best, you know, their best mascot for the system, Mario, were like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to create a Mario game that's like an educational game, right? To convince parents that video games are not all that bad, etc., etc., etc. But I have a feeling that the game probably didn't sell very well. And if it did, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people returned it or whatever the deal was, except for the parents of those kids that were like, you know what, son, this is going to be good for you. No, you're going to play this game, and you know what? You're not allowed to play any other video game until you beat this one. I mean, can you imagine being one of these kids? And by the way, if you were one of these kids, please, by all means, share your story in the comments section, because I feel for you. This is so many years later, and let me tell you, I feel for you if that was you. Because like I said earlier, I think I can speak for every single person that we all dread homework, right? We all did. And there's even arguments today that could be taken that homework is a waste. Like, for me personally, I would love it if homework was just practice, you know, and if you were to do all your homework, and if it was optional, if it could just be used as practice, and you actually did it all and turned it in, you know, you could get extra credit, you know, as opposed to making it something that's mandatory and part of your grade. But I mean, but that's a big debate, but I don't want to get into that, because there's pros and cons on both sides, and that's going to be a whole other a whole other rabbit hole to get into. But anyway, despite all that, I think my point still stands. Mario's Time Machine absolutely tricked every single person that got a hold of this thing, unless they just wanted to beat every single game that was in existence. I don't know anybody who has, but anyway, but here is the fun part of the story that I think you guys will dig, that I mentioned a minute or so ago, right? So my best friend, the one that, you know, was having the sleepover that weekend when I had the game, when I rented it, his mom just happened to be a really huge history buff. And guess what? He ended up, I don't remember if I actually let him borrow the game and then return it later on for us to return, or if they decided to return it or whatever it was. But he either took the game home with him or went to Blockbuster and rented it himself, and you know, and basically his mom by heart knew every single answer to all the questions that were in the game, and he told me he beat the game in like a very short period of time. And I was like, wow. He called me and he told me that, and I was like, wow. And I would be the one that would always call my friends, right? Because I'd be the one that, you know, on Fridays, you know, I'd be like, hey, you want to have a sleepover, or, you know. But anyway, the story is that, like, he beat the game, you know, because his mom knew every question. But holy hell, I couldn't resist making a video on this, because this is one of those video games that literally tricked everybody. But with that being said, whether it was the 90s, whether it was the 2000s, whether it was something recent or in the 2010s or whatever it is, I want to know, have you guys ever been tricked by a video game? And in case you guys are ever asking if I ever got tricked by a video game, again, the answer to that question was yes. It wasn't exactly like a Mario's Time Machine, to where it was like an educational type of video game, but it was a game that kind of did trick me, and worse yet, I ended up buying it. But perhaps that's another video for another day, despite the fact that I didn't play that game very much, despite the fact that I bought it. But yeah, if I ever make a video talking about that, you're gonna kind of understand where I was coming from with that. But I was like, I don't know, 18, 19 years old when I got that game, and yeah, I made a mistake, but I think you guys will kind of understand. So even GameSpot reviewed the game and gave it a terrible score, and it was one of the funniest game reviews that I've ever seen in my life. But which made me feel better about the fact that, holy crap, I made this mistake. But at the same time, I still felt bad that I made a mistake, and I felt like an idiot. But anyway, with that being said, I'd really like to for you guys to share your comments down below. Whether you ever want to, whether it's you talking about how much you dreaded homework, whether you got tricked by Mario's Time Machine back in the 90s, or whether you got tricked by another game at any point in time that you sorely regret buying or renting back in the day where you could rent, or if you Gameflyed it back in the days of Gamefly or whatever it was. I want to know, I want to read your stories down below. And with that being said, guys, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and or listen, and I hope I'm not alone in this particular story, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.